Welcome to the Jessica Koulianos Podcast. Hey guys, so I'm with one of my dearest friends in the entire world, Miss Steffany Gretzinger. We are just going to talk about friendship and ministry. Yeah. We'll probably talk about a lot of things. We really are friends, so you'll probably just see us talking like we always do, sitting at home. And we just are going to ask you to join us today. So what I wanted to hit, Steph, something that I feel like, I'm not sure if I've ever heard it talked about before, but it's something that we talk about a lot, me and you, Michael, just being intentional in friendship, ministry relationships, how to actually have deep connections outside of just the platform. And I'd love to start off. I have so many questions for you.
There's so many places to go.
But like I've often said this to people about our relationship because people have watched us and they're like, you guys really feel like family. It's like a sisterhood. And Michael says all the time, you're his redheaded sister.
I know.
And it really does feel like family. We know that it is, but people that watch us go, it does feel like this is genuine. Yeah. And we met in the presence of the Lord together. Do you remember that?
I do.
So we were in Ohio, right? And that was the first time that we had dinner that one time in Reading.
Yes, in Reading.
And you just went right for it with me. Remember what you said to me? What did you say to me?
Moonstone Bistro.
Yep.
Well, we were... It was you and Michael and Stephen and I, and you all had lived in our Airbnb when you came to Reading.
Yeah,
which was
the Lord.
It was so the Lord, because I hadn't met you. Stephen is the only one that was interacting with you all too.
That's right. Yeah.
So it was really precious of the Lord to. I felt like we were hosting miracles for each other. It was a really wild thing. But yes, then we went to that. I think you were leaving. You were about to come back to Orlando,
back to Florida, yeah.
And we just wanted to make sure we got some time in before you left.
I know.
And we sat down to the table, and it was just a few minutes. Michael and Stephen had started talking, and I just looked at Jess, and I'm like, so what was it like to be Benny Hinn's daughter?
And I was like, oh, you're going there.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, I am. And I love that about you. And I think what it did for me is it took any guard I had down in that moment. Right. And I really felt like, oh, this girl's not doing the surface thing with me. She really wants to get to know me. Yeah. And that made me feel really safe. But the first time I think we ever met, well, I think you and Michael maybe actually we got introduced was on the platform when Lou Engle invited us to...
Was it Cleveland?
It was Cleveland.
Yes.
And Michael met you and Jeremy Riddle in that moment. And then we really connected when you came to Jesus 19, deeply.
That's right.
And I've often told people this. I said, the reason that our hearts have been so united with Steph is we met in the presence of the Lord. And that was the foundation of our friendship. And I honestly feel this with all my heart. I think I'll be your friend for my entire life. I don't even think that. I know it because you're so genuine. And I wish a lot of people would understand that friendships that are bonded in the presence of God, there is longevity.
It's true.
And it's real because there's so many counterfeit relationships, especially in ministry.
It's true.
So just talk about that for a moment, Steph, being at the table and kind of what you were talking about last night.
And when we were just in the other room a few minutes ago, it is true. I think when a relationship starts in that kind of purity and it's about Jesus, you're not networking.
Yes.
And we're not like, oh, that's so-and-so.
Yeah.
I got to make the connection. Yeah. We came for Jesus. We met in his presence, like you're saying. And then being around each other was like, oh, they make me love Jesus more. Yeah. I need to know them. I would love to know them, right? And that's how I felt with you all.
Yeah.
So I think it gets very easy. Leaders that are seen or known by more people, right? When you're on a platform and people are watching your life and everybody gathers for conferences and big events, and you have all these leaders, beautiful leaders, that come, and they come for these big things, and it's high, everything. Yeah. Lots of beauty. It's all the things, though, right? Yeah. And we are all on a platform together, and there's all this time spent together on platforms, but it's really sad, actually, how little time
it's very surface.
is spent around tables.
Yeah, true.
And what we're trying to do what I would say, like the difference that I feel in our relationship, and I know with the way that we do relationships with others, is that we're trying to spend more time around tables than we do even on the platform. The platform, hopefully, is the overflow
of what's really happening behind the scenes.
Of what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, I agree. And sitting with you at a table is an experience. You read us that book. Remember that time we all sat together and we feasted, and you opened up a book and you brought it and read it over us when we were eating together. And
we lit the candles.
We lit the candles, like these candles we have, the non-toxic, scent-free candles that you brought to Thanksgiving. But I think I've grown up in ministry. You've also grown up in ministry.
Right.
I think that's something that actually pushed me away into the world, to be really honest with you, was seeing how fake a lot of these relationships were, how competitive they were with one another. We really weren't preferring each other. Everybody, if you had a friend, it was... Let me bring you in close so I can possibly one-up you or use you. Exactly. Like it typically was one or the other.
Yeah.
Either I need something from you or I'm bringing you close because I see you as a competitor and I want to try to get ahead.
Right.
And I saw that a lot with my dad growing up. And we would talk about this a lot, and he's very cultured. So that was one area he was pretty strong in, was being a true friend to people. Yes. But I remember watching how hurt he would get when he felt used by others. And so I just was like, if this is what ministry is.
Forget it.
Yeah, I don't want a part in it. Because I was just wanting something real and loyal. So I went to probably the worst crew you could possibly go to, but they were loyal. They were nuts, but they were loyal. And I just wanted that so desperately. Yeah. And I remember thinking, is this how ministry will always be? And unfortunately, I would say it really is the reality. And that's why I want to talk about this, because I think people need to be really intentional with each other.
Right.
And prefer one another. Can you just talk about preferring each other and what that looks like?
Well, I love what you were saying in the other room about how it is true. There's sort of there tends to be this sense of people not being very excited to have their moment on the platform. Yeah. Being very excited, needing to get to their session.
Yes.
Or their whatever, and almost getting irritated. I've seen it in worship. Yeah. When it didn't get to someone's song.
Yeah. Or you have the mic, but they think they should have the mic.
Right.
Yeah.
They think they should have the mic, and so they feel like they've got something. Yeah. Something's on them, and then they're like, the spirit of that shows that the Lord wasn't on it anyway. Yeah. Right? But it happens a lot, right? It
does.
And I think the beauty of when it's really about Jesus, and when a relationship is really about Jesus, I am not going to care, you're not going to care who has the mic.
No.
What the Lord's doing, as long as you get to be in the room.
You just want to
be with
there.
You want to be there. You want to see Jesus, and you want to be with the ones you love in His presence. Yes. And you, I pray that this is what the Lord, He keeps us this way. But the hope is that you completely forget about anything you thought you were gonna do. You're so caught up and carried by His Spirit together that you're like, oh, I don't.
Well, that's not the reason you get into this anyway. And I remember, we just were with our sweet students at Jesus School, and they're right over there. And I remember when I used to do the interviews, I've been delivered. I don't have to do all the interviews anymore. But I remember when I would do the interview, they would say, well, what does it mean to be a Jesus School student? And I would always say, we're looking for people that prefer one another. Yes. We're looking for people that want to go low. We're looking for people that really do care. And I remember when I started to say that to the students I would interview, that was so foreign to them. What do you mean? I'm like, no, this is what it means to be like Jesus. We really do need to prefer one another, which is easier said than done. I've struggled with that before, where I'd want to be seen. I'd want to be known. And really, it was an insecurity in me, if I'm being very honest. I'm sure I have my moments, but I can honestly say I've never felt like that with my genuine friends.
No.
And I've only felt like that in times where I feel like people are like that towards me, which is still a sin, though. If I'm going to contribute to that and feel that way, then I'm obviously, there's something weak in my life.
We're still clinging to it.
Yes.
To the thing.
Yes. Yeah. But I feel like the more confident I got in the Lord, the more confident I got in my walk with Him, that desire to be seen and known really did start to dwindle down. And I wish more people could understand that we find all of our security in Jesus.
Yes.
And so there's no need to want to compete, because if we're in this for Him, then that's all that matters. And the whole network thing, can you hit on that for a second, Steph? Because you live in Tennessee, which is like the network capital of the world.
Well, and there's more than enough Jesus for all of us to have all of Him.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
If we're not receiving Him, that's about our receptor. It's not about Him, because He longs to give Himself to us.
Yes.
And I think the networking thing. I mean, I see a whole lot of people want to make relationships for the benefit. They want to benefit from what the Lord's doing on you. The beauty is they recognize when the Lord's doing something. The sad part is that they're looking to benefit from what the Lord is doing on you. Yeah. And hope that you'll be the face of something for them, or hope that when you come, they'll invite you because it will draw people. Yeah. And this is where that, and platforms speak of authority. They speak of endorsement. Yes. So if someone comes and asks me, it feels very clear at this point when someone is, the spirit of it is different, right? Yeah. And I'll often say no to someone. I'll say, I'd love to come sit in a service before I say yes. Yeah. We don't know each other at all. I'd love to come sit at a table and be in a service and see what. Yeah. And I don't say that with everybody even, but there are times when I'm like, I feel the Lord on your reach. I feel the Lord on maybe something here, but I can't, if I jump onto your platform, it's an endorsement.
Oh, for sure.
And I can't do that without knowing you at all. Yeah. Or having a really strong word from the Lord that I'm supposed to go. Exactly. That's different.
I love that you said that, because that was something I actually wanted to hit on, especially for people in ministry. I know everyone watching this might not be in ministry, but this is a conversation that I think every Christian should be having. It applies to life. It applies to all of us, but especially people that are in leadership and ministry. Really prayerfully consider who you say yes to. Michael and I, our life is just so full here in Florida that right now, unless if the Lord specifically says go, we typically do things with people we're really in covenant with. Yes. And again, there are exceptions. There is times where someone will invite us to come and we don't know them. No. But the Lord, we pray. We pray before we take any engagement. Joy Dawson taught us that. So we're not saying yes or no to anything until we go to the Lord. Even if
I pray every time I come to Jesus Image.
I love that.
And you're my family.
I love
and some of my dearest
even
friends.
The timing needs to be right.
I have to ask.
Yeah,
and you have to ask.
That. Yes.
That has to be the standard for our living.
Well, because the Lord's in control and He knows. And I typically, even when like upper room or someone we know very well says, please come. Yes. Of course, I know that it's a yes in my heart, because we clearly run together and we're in covenant. But I always ask the Lord too, what's the timing? But I do think that there are a lot of leaders and ministers that just say yes to anybody and anything because maybe, I know of them, but that's really not what you should be looking for, because what you know on a stage, now we hope in a perfect world that everyone is the same on a platform as they are behind closed doors. That's the goal.
Right. But we know it's not true.
But we know that's not always the case.
Not always the case.
So that's why even here at Jesus Image, you'll see we really prayerfully consider, especially who we bring on our pulpit here. Right. Because we really do want to know them. We want to walk with them. We want to have a trust. Right. And I want to kind of hit Steph, like just some basic things. I think people are going to go, I get what you're saying, but what does that look like in practical life? So like you and I, we're friends. We do ministry together too. But just talk about, like, for a second, what our friendship looks like. It's kind of a funny one.
Just the practical, like,
just the practical, like, things. At home when we're not ministering together, when we're not doing events together. What is, like, how do we, just, you're so intentional with us, Steph. So just talk about that a little bit.
Well, I feel like, and the beauty of this is that I would never, if it wasn't for a reason, I would never be like, this is the part that I wouldn't share out of covenant, because I'm always going to be protective of, like, you know, people, because there's so many people that just, man, they can't wait to become friends with somebody and post them on Instagram, or, you know what I'm saying?
I know.
So this is a place that I'm really protective of unless we're going there together.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've stayed in your house.
Yes.
Many times.
Yeah.
A lot.
Stayed in your house.
You've stayed in our house. We've spent time away together, little vacation days.
Yes.
We've spent holidays together.
Yes.
Now, and I think we've laughed a lot. We talk about all the normal things.
Yes.
And I think it's a weird week if I've gone more than a few days without touching base.
Yeah, it does feel a little like...
Right, then that's like...
I haven't heard from Steph in like a month. That's not normal. Yeah.
Right, like that's an odd or crazy month with just life.
Yeah.
But I would say we stay connected on... Like, I committed to share my life with you, too.
Yeah.
And that means the other things, too, to make sure that I'm continually known by you.
Yes.
And I ask questions, and you share your life with us, so that we pray for each other all the time.
Yes.
We pray with each other. We talk through the hard things, and I just think it's very practical. It's very true and practical, like the word talks about.
And it actually takes an effort.
Yeah.
And that's something, I'll say Michael and you are probably better in this than I am. Michael, out of any guy I know, Michael's probably the most intentional person I've ever met.
So true.
Such a good friend. He's that friend that he's always calling, always checking in.
Yes.
If you need something, he's the first friend to go, let me get behind this. And I've always loved that about Michael. And you've got that quality as well. And
Steven's like you.
Steven, me, I think that's why we get along so well.
It works so well.
Me and Steven are the same person, and you and Michael are the same person in many ways. That's a very true statement, actually. But I think that's something, like, we're all very busy. We're parents. We've got a life outside of ministry. But because we know that this is a covenant relationship from the Lord, and I also think that that's something that people throw around too loosely. We're in covenant friendship, brotherhood, sisterhood. And I'm like, dude, you hate me. Don't say you're in covenant with me. My dad, Middle Eastern, obviously. So they really get covenant. So this story could be a little too much for most people, but if you're from that part of the world, you'll understand it. But I want people to understand what it actually means to be in covenant with someone. So my dad's dad used to, and I'm not encouraging anyone to do this. Don't do it. But back in the day in the Middle East, you would actually make a blood covenant. The blood would mix because that's what it meant to be in covenant. And my grandfather, my dad's dad, did that with a dear friend. And it meant, if you die, I take care of your family. If I die, you take care of my family. This is what real covenant is. Like, we have each other's back in this way. And that's what covenant means in different parts of the world. And I think here in America, especially, we use that so loosely. This is my covenant friend. But we really don't mean it. We don't mean that it's just words. We really wouldn't be there for that person if they really needed us, or if they lost their favor or their notoriety or whatever they had in their life that we get to have access to. If that went away, would we still be there? Yeah. Again, I know me and Steph run pretty deep together, and I'm not saying I have other great friends that maybe I don't talk to as much as you, but there are a few people in my life where I'm like, these are my sisters. Yeah. And I think the older you get, the less you have, which is really great actually, because I feel like I'd rather have a few really deep relationships than 20 surface ones that aren't really deep, because I feel like that's when you really get hurt. Yes. Because your expectation is so high. You really need people in certain times. We all have low seasons in life.
It's true.
And but I'm like, no, just give me one or two really
well, then you get
good
spread
ones.
So thin that nobody even gets
then
the best
no one
of
gets
each other.
you. But I think back to it's so shallow. And I feel like that we're teaching a generation, or even our children, to be surfaced. And I feel like that's why there's no real covenant, because it doesn't go deep.
Well, I think about when you said that, I mean, and biblically, covenant requires blood. It requires a life.
Yes, yeah.
And that is saying, hey, I would do anything for you that I could do.
Yeah.
You know, like, as God's my witness.
Yeah.
If something ever happened, you know, like, I'll take care of your family. I'll love your kids. I love them. Like, you know, like, I love mine in this weird supernatural way. It's like, you know?
Yeah.
And I was thinking about Acts. I was going to talk about Acts Church. It reminds me of when it talks about, and there was no need among them.
They all really had
They
each
all
other's best
gave.
interests. Yes.
Yes. It says they all gave as they had need.
Yeah.
So if you had a need, I'm going to give what I can to that. If I have a need, we're gonna bring all that we can to the table that the Lord's given to us to take care of one another. Yeah. And I think that can look 100 different ways.
It could, and there's boundaries, of course, healthy ones, and there's you don't want a one-sided relationship either. You know, nobody wants that. But again, that's not real covenant if it's like that either.
But we love to beat a dead horse.
Yes.
When you're loyal, you can tend to.
That's true.
Give more than is being shared in a relationship, and those are painful to walk away from.
That's painful, and I think at times that's something. You know, I'm in my 40s now. You're a little younger than me, but we're getting older, and I think that's something that I've even taught on this with students here. Like, hey, if there comes a point where it's no more give and take, it's all take. You're a powerful person. You can walk away. In love.
Right.
Not walk away with unforgiveness, not walk away bitter, not walk away running your mouth against somebody. Oh. But you have to start seeing your worth. And I think that's why you do have fewer friends the older that you do get and the more life you live, because it's like, I just don't have all the time in the world, but I want to give it really well to the people that the Lord has put in my life as friends. Right. And sometimes just about like how we communicate, sometimes that just looks like flying to be with one another through bad days. Just to
sit with you.
Just to sit.
Stand next to you to say, I'm here.
Yeah.
That's it.
And sometimes we don't even have, I mean, we both have a lot to say. We talk, you know, we're not short for words, but I've noticed my real friends, just like Jesus, when you have a real relationship with him, we don't have to say a lot to one another. You know, like if you meet someone for the first time, you're sitting together and you feel like I have to talk, because the silence is weird. You have to keep it going. And it's like, it's awkward. And then, but when it's a real friend, you can just come sit with each other, and you don't even have to say much, but just your presence being there makes everything feel at ease. And it's that way with the Lord. I say, like, if you feel like when you're alone in stillness with him and you feel like you have to muster up words all the time because you're not in stillness just being with Jesus, then that means that you need to go a little deeper.
It's true. There's not intimacy there if you can't just.
Yes. And that is true intimacy, is true. Not having to put something surface, not having like
fill all the space.
Yeah. I remember when you guys came for Thanksgiving, and I like my house to be clean when I have guests, and you know, I do kind of have that thing where we all do.
I'm right there.
But I remember that day, like I was trying to make everything so perfect, and the turkey took like 3 hours longer than it was supposed to, and like like nothing worked as it should, and it was just, but we just went with it. And I remember like telling Michael, like, this is why I can have Steph and Steven at my house for Thanksgiving, because they really are like family, where it's like, it's mess. Remember my dad kept trying to like bake little chickens or something, like he brought a little rotisserie and we were trying to eat that because the turkey wasn't ready. It was like,
just eat what's ready. We can take.
I tried so hard to make it perfect, but it just didn't happen. But if it was someone I didn't know well, I would have probably burst in tears. Yeah, because you feel like, I have to just make everything right. But I think that's back to like covenant relationship, and just I want to hit on loyalty a little bit too, Steph, because that's something I feel like is under attack right now. I remember something my dad said once when he was preaching. He said, "What made Mary stay? Yeah. Why did Mary stay, but yet so many others deserted Jesus?" Of course, it was her love for Jesus, of course. But what did she have in her that the rest didn't have in the moment? Loyalty. And I've often thought, if people can't be loyal to one another, if we can't be loyal to our spouse, loyal to our friends, loyal to our family, how do we think we're going to know how to be loyal to Jesus if we can't even be loyal here? Like without persecution, you know, without like real persecution that the church might come into one day. I think we will. I mean, the Bible promises it, so we will.
Yes.
But like, if we don't know how to be loyal to one another, and of course we should be loyal to Jesus over each other, but if we can't even do that, what makes us think that we would be loyal to the Lord if our life was on the line?
Absolutely.
Talk just about loyalty for a moment, like what it means to you.
I think you say it the best. I mean, when you're talking, what comes to mind is Peter denying Jesus.
Yeah.
Even as one of his closest friends.
Yeah.
Right? Like, without the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, without the help, the leadership, the direction, like without the nature of Jesus living inside of us and through us by the Holy Spirit and his word, we don't have the ability to be that.
Yeah.
You're not just like born loyal.
No.
It's these attributes, these characters, those things are from the loyal one. I mean, Jesus, he keeps his word.
Yeah.
He is his word.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to be that people, he has to make us that. I think true disciples that are really walking with Jesus and really wanting so much to be marked by the nature of Jesus, to learn his ways, to know him, to reflect him, to be like him, that every aspect of our lives would reflect the way of Jesus, then our relationships should show it too.
Yeah, it should be who we are.
It should be who we are.
I
We
agree.
Shouldn't have to think about that.
Yeah.
It should be, like, I would hope that the Lord would have to pull me back before he'd have to say, okay, on this one, you're not just going to go. You're not just going to run to Orlando on this. You know what I'm saying? Like, he leads us about when to be there in body, when not to be. But the loyalty part, I would like to think, I don't even have to think about. It's not something, it's just.
You don't have to try to be loyal. Yeah, it's just kind of who you become.
It's not like this, you have to work up all this.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's because it's the substance of Jesus inside of us that goes.
He's loyal, and if we want to look like him and walk like him, talk like him, act like him, then we should be that way as well.
Peter denied him. Jesus did not deny Peter. In that moment, he was merciful. There will come a day.
Yes.
There will come a day when if we're not loyal and we don't let Jesus do that work in us.
Yeah.
He won't tolerate us not being loyal to one another. He won't tolerate
I agree.
the sin of, like, because if I'm not loyal, then I'm the opposite.
Disloyal.
I'm disloyal. And that, to say it, maybe is more troubling to say it that way, because everybody wants to use the language of loyalty, but it's costly.
It is costly. Yeah, exactly. I remember I was, we've been obviously in ministry for a long time here at Jesus Image, and Michael didn't grow up in it like I did. Poor guy. I think he didn't know what he got himself into. He's like, gosh, it
was supposed to be that way.
Doggy dog.
It's a good combo.
The Lord knew what he was doing when he married us with one another. But I remember sitting with Theo, my oldest, who's now 18, and he looked at me and he said, Mom, ministry just seems so competitive and so cutthroat. He's like, that it makes me kind of like, it was almost like it was a deja vu of me talking to my own dad when I was Theo's age. Like,
Totally.
He's like, I don't know if this is what it's like. He's like, this is like corporate America. And he's like, it's supposed to be different, Mom. It's the church. This was years ago.
Whoa.
And it broke my heart. And I was like, Bud, why are you? And he's just kind of a cutthroat kind of kid. Like, he just says it.
I think they all are.
all
your kids are like that.
They are. I think Theo maybe and Sophia more than most.
But
they say what's on their mind.
shooters.
They're straight shooters. And I've always told them to be that way. I'm like, you need to feel liberty to be yourself. Right. And I said, Theo, let's talk about that. It was a really great convo we got to have as mother and son, just talking about like, hey, that's the world's way, but we don't need to do it that way. We need to do it the biblical way. Right. And I think this podcast is almost coming to an end, but we're going to do a part 2. And I thought we were going to talk about something else, but I want to keep talking about this because I really feel like there's a lot more to unpack. Right. And the goal is to help. I have some stories of my dad that's coming to mind. I've got lots of stories too. So
I bet you do.
We will be back and we will see you for part 2 on this podcast.
Oh, I love it.
Thank you so much for listening to the Jessica Koulianos Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find more resources at jessicakoulianos.com. You can also join us in person or online every Sunday at Jesus Image Church. For more information on Jesus School, local and nationwide events hosted by Jesus Image, and resources, visit us at jesusimage.tv.